What is going on, YouTube universe? My name is Trent and welcome to the Hip and Shoulder, the channel where we discuss everything Australian rules football. And with the 2024 AFL Draft kicking off tomorrow night, I thought I'd try my hand at a mock draft. Something that I have never done, but something that I feel, if this channel is going to grow and push forward, is something that we could really dive into over, the coming years, and it helps us create conversation, which is what I'm all about. It's about discussing the players that are available. It's an opinion-based list, obviously, so the selections I make might not be selections that you feel are going to be made, or the next person is going to agree or disagree with. So I want to preface this video by saying, if you do agree or disagree, let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know who you would like your club to see draft, whether you agree with the selections I make, whether you disagree and you would rather see your club or another club take another player. Conversation is what it's all about. Discussion is where it's at, so let's have it down in the comment section down below. This particular mock draft is going to focus on night 1, which is the opening round of the draft, which will see picks 1 through 27 selected. And as a Richmond supporter, this is the draft that I've been single-handedly most invested in for a number of years. I always tune in on draft night. I always love to see who Richmond kind of want to go and bring into the club and bring into our system. But with Richmond undergoing this imminent rebuild and holding 8 of the first 24 picks, very excited to see how this goes down, because with a deep draft pool like we see, I feel some of these players, not only just drafted to Richmond, but players that are available for other clubs as well, could really make an immediate impact wherever they land. That takes me to pick number 1. And while a lot of people would agree that Levi Ashcroft, without a shadow of a doubt, is the best player in this year's draft, I don't think Richmond pushed the envelope by forcing Brisbane to make their father-son bid with pick number 1. Personally, I, as well as many other Richmond supporters, share the same sentiment. I want to see Richmond back in the player that they want to help, with this rebuild. I want to see a player brought into Richmond's system and have that faith installed into them, and have, the memory of in the back of their mind after they get drafted and for the many years that they're going to play at the club, knowing that Richmond could very well have bid on Levi Ashcroft and forced that envelope, but selecting this particular player, putting that faith into them and letting them know we value you as our number 1 pick, I think that is the way to go about it, especially if you're rebuilding and you want to have these kids invested in coming on board and having impact and, running straight out of the gate at opportunity. I think pick number 1 overall, and it's a pick that I feel almost every draft that I've looked at is in agreement with, is going to be Sam Lawler. Outside of Levi Ashcroft, this kid is probably the best kid available, although he did have an injury-plagued season within this draft year. That being said, the averages this kid had, despite the fact that he was injured for majority of the year, was absolutely incredible. You've got to know that, coming off of an injury, then coming back to play, and then getting re-injured, or, having a niggle here and there, in between all of that, he still managed to average 27 disposals, 7.3 inside 50s, and 7 marks per game playing as a midfielder. Then when it came to the Under-18s National Championships, he was moved into a more forward role, where he was able to collect an average of 4 tackles a game as that two-way kind of threat. And I feel with Shai Bolton being traded to Fremantle, Lawler has the ability to play that Shai Bolton role. He can move into the midfield where he's going to have immediate impact. He amasses the ball rather quickly, move him forward. His scoreboard, pressure, his tackling pressure is something that's going to be welcomed into Richmond. I think Adam Uze loves having those kind of swing players. We've seen throughout the 2024 season a lot of players kind of shifted around, probably due to injury more so than anything else. But the fact that Lawler is a dual threat that has been likened to, the capabilities of players like Dustin Martin, Christian Petrarca, Jordan De Goey, really does set him above a lot of the other midfielders available in this particular pack. The injuries probably might scare Richmond off a little bit, and obviously with a year where we were hit so hard, maybe doubt starts to creep in a little bit with the fact that he's had a couple of injuries he's had to battle through this year. But when you look at him collectively as a whole, his explosiveness in the midfield, the ability to accumulate disposals, his effectiveness is absolutely incredible. Hitting the scoreboard, it makes him such a well-rounded player, and I feel Richmond would fumble if they didn't have a crack at him at pick number 1. His strengths are listed as explosiveness, scoreboard impact, contested work, and clean hands. Something that Richmond has been dying to have are players that can win contested ball, because Richmond gets smashed in contested ball almost every week. So the fact that this kid can go in, he's efficient by hand, he's very clean above head, below on ground as well, can hit the scoreboard, he, loves to win the contested ball. I feel he goes pick number 1. Might not have immediate impact at Richmond in the way of, he might still be injured, he needs to battle through that. But I love the look of him, and I really feel if we're investing time and effort into a kid, this is one that could come in and really be a game changer once his time comes about. Pick number 2 currently sits with North Melbourne, but I feel there is going to be a trade that goes down here, and I feel this happens for a number of reasons. The first being the fact that we have seen other clubs kind of dip their toes into now interviewing different players that we didn't expect. Namely, Michael Voss flying over to Adelaide to interview Sid Draper. Now, Carlton have been tied to Finn O'Sullivan for a very long time, similarly with Richmond, and I feel the fact that they've flown over to Adelaide to speak to Sid Draper could kind of be a contingency plan just in case Finn O'Sullivan goes before their pick at pick number 3. North Melbourne currently hold pick number 2, and then don't get another pick for a very long time. And they've been tied to a player that I feel they can afford to trade out their pick to a pick 6 and still pick up that player they're looking for, whilst also picking up Richmond's pick 18 to allow them to pick up a secondary player within the first round. If North Melbourne can still secure the player they're after and still add another body on top of that within the first 27 picks, I don't see how that doesn't entice them to make that trade. Richmond obviously making the trade as well. They might lose pick 6 and pick 18 in the process, but they can back up pick number 1 with selecting yet another gun midfielder to solidify this rebuild. Obviously, we lost a lot of players with Jack Graham, with Shea Bolton, we lost Liam Baker, so there's room for rotation. Jacob Hopper has been out injured for quite a bit. Dion Prestia will probably only play this next year and then retire. So bringing in another midfielder to complement Sam Lawler would be high on Richmond's wish list. And I feel that deal gets done. North Melbourne's pick number 2 will be traded for Richmond's pick number 6 and pick number 18. And with pick number 2, Richmond are going to select Finn O'Sullivan. I wrestled with this pick for a very long time because I feel Richmond could also look at Jarvis Smith for this particular pick as well, but I like the fact that Finn is a bigger-bodied midfielder, and I feel it's something that Richmond are really lacking in, are those big-bodied brutes that can get in and under in the contest, can break tackles, are clean with disposal. Finn O'Sullivan ticks all of those boxes. His stoppage craft is absolutely incredible, which would complement the contested work of Sam Lawler. His kicking, his marking, his hands, his output in general is rated as elite. He's an inside-out threat that, when compared to the other midfielders in this draft, kind of sets him above some of those because of his effectiveness around the ball. I just love the look of him. Ever since he came over to Richmond's VFL system, he played a couple of games with us. I really loved the look of him, and I was convinced from that point on Finn O'Sullivan is the man that Richmond's going to pick up. And for a very long time, I thought that Finn O'Sullivan would probably be the number 1 pick overall. But if Richmond can do the deal to secure pick number 2 and we can walk out of the draft early on with taking Sam Lawler and Finn O'Sullivan back to back, I'm a happy man, and I think a lot of Richmond supporters would be on board with that pick as well. Pick number 3 would be going to Carlton, but I feel this is where the Levi Ashcroft father-son bid is going to come into place. Carlton are going to pick him. Brisbane are going to come in and say, no you don't, he's coming to us, and they're going to pick up the best kid in the draft. His ball-winning ability is elite. His contested work, his cleanliness, his footy IQ is all absolutely phenomenal. And if you thought Will Ashcroft was good, the conversation point around Levi Ashcroft is he is the better player of the two. Will Ashcroft just came off one of the biggest, finals runs for an individual player that we have seen for a while. Very, I dare say, Dustin Martin-like in the way he was able to impact each game throughout this particular final series, and obviously walked away with the Norm Smith medal come the grand final. He is going to have his brother brought down to the club. They're going to have such a good midfield, Brisbane, with these two running around. It's just a matter of working out how Levi Ashcroft fits into this lineup, because you've still got Lachie Neale, Josh Dunkley, you've got the rotation of Cam Rayner going in the middle, you've got other players kind of coming through as well, but I feel it's not going to be long before we see a Levi Ashcroft debut, and boy, it's going to be very good to see those brothers running around and accumulating the ball together. Everyone likes seeing the Dacos boys going about it. I think the Ashcrofts can go about it in just as big, if not a bigger way. Pick number 4 goes to Carlton, moving down the board by one spot given that father-son bid. And with Finn O'Sullivan off the board, I think Sid Draper is the one that gets picked up here. This kid has been touted by many as the most polished midfielder of the bunch, and was probably a late bolter given the fact that, the year has been surrounded around Ashcroft, Lawler, O'Sullivan, Jaeger Smith, even Harvey Langford. Sid Draper's popped up and was really linked strongly to Adelaide, given the fact that he's from South Australia himself. But the fact that Michael Voss has made the effort to go over to Adelaide and interview this kid and show interest in wanting to bring him in, I think it's a no-brainer. I think Carlton pick him up given the fact that he is available. His speed and evasiveness is probably what's going to really lock Carlton in here. And even though Carlton bat deep in that midfield, having a player that has elite speed, I feel, is something that Carlton is really going to love. Sam Walsh can run, don't get me wrong, and his aerobic capacity is incredible. But Patrick Cripps is more of a bigger-bodied kind of contested ball-winning brute. And if you can add a player like Sid Draper into the mix where, players like Walsh and Cripps can become those accumulator players to get the ball outside to a Draper whose run and carry can be really invaluable, I feel, to Carlton's midfield. I think that makes him a more, tasty selection here. He's also got senior experience, and his leadership qualities are something that Carlton have looked at and really admire. And overall, his work rate is second to none. Carlton, I think if they pick Sid Draper up here, are picking up a really good kid. That's not to discredit any of the other kids either, because the kids that are going to go, especially in the top 10, are all going to be incredible. But Sid Draper being a bolter late in the season and coming up to where he's at, I think any club that lands him are going to be incredibly stoked. Pick number 5 rolls on through, and with Sid Draper off the table, Jaeger Smith is the selection that will be made for Adelaide, I feel. He has been linked to comparisons to Trent Cotchin when it comes to discussing Jaeger Smith and his work rate that he put into the Richmond VFL system when he had that opportunity to come through. His leadership abilities have been regarded as, second to none by a lot of people, and I feel Adelaide, as much as it probably might come across a little bit arrogant as me saying, I feel they're crying out for leadership. I mean, they've got Jordan Dawson as a captain, which I think is incredible. But we've seen over recent years all the scandals and everything that have popped up with Adelaide. I feel having another player on field that can have that, that steady head and that ability to lead from the forefront. I think Adelaide are really keen on bringing somebody like that in. Sid Draper has that ability, but that fact that he's now off the cards in my mock draft and he's gone to Carlton, leadership-wise, Jaeger Smith is on the same level, if not above Sid Draper, and I think Adelaide are going to be incredibly excited to bring in a kid with those leadership abilities. His ball winning, his stoppage craft, and his IQ are all something that set him apart as well. He might be smaller framed, but I feel that fits Adelaide's kind of niche and wants a little bit more. We saw Isaac Rankin as a smaller player rotate through the midfield. Bringing in a Jaeger Smith has that ability to kind of have those two players interchange and even work together at some points within that midfield. It allows players like Rory Laird, if needed, to play a more defensive role. It allows players like Jordan Dawson to revert to a more defensive role. I feel Jaeger Smith ticks a lot of not only wants but needs for Adelaide, and it would be very surprising if Adelaide's pick comes around and goes the way that I've kind of suggested so far and they don't look at Jaeger Smith. Melbourne has pick number 6 in hand, and I feel they take Harvey Langford here. Langford is a player that has been linked to Richmond given his games that he has played in the back end of the VFL season with us. He accumulated a few disposals in those games. He managed to show a lot of scoreboard pressure as well given those moments. And I feel he is not just a player that, you know, Melbourne would be interested in bringing in, but I feel he fits a need for Melbourne. And that's what I've tried to do within this mock draft, as much as some teams might just go down the route of selecting the best available player given the time. Some teams, especially when you look at teams like Richmond, Melbourne, St Kilda, they're going to be selecting players that are going to fit certain needs that they need ticked off. And I feel what Melbourne are really crying out for are players that can have scoreboard impact and function within a forward line that has been dysfunctional for a number of years now. You know, they can't expect Cozzy Pickett and Jacob Van Rooyen to be hitting the scoreboard every week and to do all the damage. You know, Bailey Fritsch can't be trusted. He can kick 5 one week and he might kick 5 behinds the next. Harrison Petty, don't even get me started on Harrison Petty. You know, Ben Brown was in and out due to injury. They need players that can come in and have immediate impact within that forward 50. And even though Harvey Langford is listed as a pure midfielder, I feel he has that ability to rotate into that forward line as a high half forward and be that hybrid kind of player. Especially we've seen Christian Petrarca at times play that role. Harvey Langford and Christian Petrarca can, you know, set each other off and, you know, be that rotation within that forward midfield link. You know, Christian Petrarca can be damaging in the midfield, then go have a rest up forward and allow Harvey Langford to run through the middle. You know, we've seen players like Tom Sparrow get more midfield minutes. We even saw Trent Rivers at the back end of this year move from defence into a more midfield set role. So it doesn't just fill that need of having a player that can hit the scoreboard up forward, but also allows another midfielder to come into the system and rotate through. It allows Trent Rivers to go back and play that defensive role if they need to. You know, I feel this is the best pick here available to Melbourne. They could very well look at a key forward here, and for a number of, you know, iterations of this draft that I put together, I did have them selecting a key forward at this position, but I think they don't let Harvey Langford slip, especially with St Kilda very interested in him and St Kilda having a pick within the next couple. I think Melbourne take him off the board. His endurance, his overhead ability, his scoreboard impact, his ball winning ability, all listed as strengths, and as I said, Melbourne would be absolutely stupid to pass him up at pick number 6. Pick number 7 is the pick that would have been pick number 6, translates to pick 7 after that Levi Ashcroft bid. North Melbourne comes on through and manages to pick up the player that they were most interested in picking up, and they land the Flying Viking in Alexander Toru. Now, this is a player that North Melbourne have been linked to for a very long time. Out of all the players in the draft, this is the one player that all the mock drafts I've seen, all the chatter and conversation leading into the actual draft itself through different AFL sources, have all highly linked North Melbourne to. While North Melbourne might have shown interest in some midfielders here and there, I feel they're too deep in the midfield. This is why I think they trade down to pick up Alexander Toru, because he is listed as a utility player. He can really be thrown around anywhere. And I don't know what kind of position they'd play him in, whether they look at playing him as a forward threat, whether they bring him in as a, you know, a need in defense. I feel definitely the defensive side of things is where they're going to be looking at, because I think it's probably where they are most deficit. You know, they've built up a strong forward line over the off-season by bringing in Jack Darling. He might be at the end part of his career, but being able to bring in a senior head like that, having Luke Parker who could play up forward as well, I feel forward craft at North Melbourne is fine. Their midfield bat's incredibly deep. It has been their defense, especially since losing Ben Mackay, has where they've struggled, especially with the injuries that they've seen to key players in that defensive structure. So I think Alex Toru comes in and has immediate impact in that defensive line. His versatility obviously sets him apart from other players within this draft, given, you know, you can hard-nosed say this player's a midfielder, this player's a forward, you know, a forwardman. With Alex, you can look at him and say, well, he can play anywhere. If you want him as a forward, you can play him as a forward. He can rotate through the midfield. But defensively, I feel is where, as I said, North Melbourne's going to have him play. His marking ability, his leap, and his athleticism would probably set him up as an intercepting defender that can rebound out of that back 50 incredibly quick. And it suits North Melbourne's, you know, structure, because you've got players like Harry Sheasel, who has now moved in for more midfield time, don't get me wrong, but you could have him coming off of halfback, Zach Fisher coming off of halfback, Caleb Daniel now being picked up and coming off of halfback. North Melbourne love to intercept and launch, and I feel the one thing that they lacked severely in 2024 was that interceptability in that back 50. So I think here, pick number 7, Alex Toru, pencil it in. It's happening. St Kilda get back-to-back picks with picks 8 and 9, and they have been linked to a number of players, Josh Smiley probably being one of the available selections at this point in time that might go. But I feel there is a player that is available at this point in time that would fit not only a want but a need yet again, and probably fits Ross Lyon's structure and, you know, game plan a little bit better than what a Josh Smiley would. And I think Beau Allen from Western Australia gets picked up at pick number 8. He has the ability to play both as a bigger-bodied, strong, you know, busting midfielder, but he can also play a defensive role. And we know that Ross Lyon loves his defensive setup, his defensive structure. It is what he has always been about. He prided himself on that when he was first at St Kilda. He went over to Fremantle, and we saw, you know, he took Zach Dawson with him and made Fremantle a defensively pressing team. And since coming back to St Kilda again, that's exactly what he's been about. He has been about setting up that defense and getting that intercept work and that rebound work a key component of how St Kilda operate. And I feel Beau Allen complements that particular structure incredibly well. He's powerful, and he's probably one of the most powerful midfielders out of the bunch, especially the ones available at this point in time. His versatility, just like Toru before him, sets him apart from other midfielders within this crop because he has the ability to go back and play in that D50. His speed is something that I think Ross Lyon would really rate as well, especially if you consider having somebody like a Nasiah Wanganeen-Malira running off of one halfback flank, and then having Beau Allen on the other halfback flank running off as well. Those two being able to be the ball winners and the dispersers off that half-back line allows a player like Jack Sinclair to possibly play more midfield minutes, which I think would only benefit St Kilda incredibly. And his senior experience, it speaks for itself. He's won many awards. He is one of the most decorated players, I feel, within this year's draft. And I think Ross Lyon here would be incredibly keen to bring him in to not only bolster his midfield, but also help set up his defensive structure, especially with losing Josh Battle. Now, not many people might rate Josh Battle. I know Josh Battle personally through family connections, and, you know, he's a local boy to where I currently am located. He's going to be a big loss. He's going to have immediate impact over at Hawthorn, and St Kilda are going to want to kind of band-aid that hole rather quickly. And Beau Allen won't only be the one player to do so. St Kilda will end up taking another player, I feel, to fill that role. But for now, Beau Allen goes at pick number 8. Pick number 9 is going to see an academy bid matched, I feel. St Kilda are going to nominate Leonardo Lombard from the Gold Coast, and the Gold Coast are going to go through and pick up the one kid that they have been tied to all season. I think even last year there was talk about Leonardo Lombard coming through, but he was just not old enough to be drafted yet. He has been likened to Touk Miller, if that sets you up with any idea of how he is possibly going to play here. He has also been linked to the likes of Chad Warner, given his breakaway speed, his explosiveness, his ability to hit the scoreboard. This is a player that is really going to complement Gold Coast midfield. Imagine having a Matt Rowell feeding the ball out to a Lombard who has this ability to break away from packs, break lines, and, you know, hit targets up forward with effectiveness. This is a player that I feel could come into a Damien Hardwick system really early, especially given, you know, Hardwick going hard at the trade period this year, bringing in John Noble, bringing in Daniel Rioli, you know, setting up that half-back line incredibly well. Lombard could be that player that sets up that defensive back and, you know, forward 50 and you know, is that ball winner through the middle that sets things up. This kid would be one that I would have loved to have Richmond to have had a crack at, but obviously academy rulings and match biddings and everything else, there is no way the Gold Coast are letting Lombard go anywhere but the Suns, and I feel we could see him as early as a round 1 debut coming in and having a red hot crack. That brings us to pick number 10 to round out the top 10, which is St Kilda's second pick, and this is where the Josh Battle hole gets filled. I think St Kilda are going to go pick up Toby Travalia, who is a intercepting beast that also has aerobic capacity great enough to run through the midfield as well. Again, fits a need for St Kilda, given the fact that they're going to be crying out for that kind of key defender role that Josh Battle was playing. Josh Battle prides himself on his intercept work. Travalia does the exact same thing. His endurance, his line breaking, his disposal, all highly rated, but his speed is where it's at as well. And I think this, again, just ticks off all the boxes in the Ross Lyon handbook. He's going to be looking for somebody to come in to feel... you know, fill that tall defender role that Battle has left, but he also has that ability to be able to swap through that midfield as well. So if Sinclair does move back to a back line, if you don't throw a Beau Allen through there, a Travalia can go through there and have just as much impact. This is a player that could go a hell of a lot earlier. I know Richmond are keen on Travalia. I don't know whether, you know, if we do not trade for, you know, pick number 2, where the pick 6 is still available and Richmond look at a Travalia at a pick 6. I don't think Travalia doesn't get picked up here. I definitely think St Kilda are going to be defensively sound early in this draft, and I think he lands at Moorabbin. Pick number 11 falls into the hands of Melbourne, and I feel they tick off yet another need here. They are looking for another key forward, I feel, rather desperately, and Harry Armstrong is the one that I feel is going to go here. There are other key forwards available, but I think Armstrong's ability, especially his aerobic capacity, is going to set him above those other key forwards, and it's his contested marking, his scoreboard impact, and his ability to split the sticks that are going to hold him in great stead. His goal kicking ability is absolutely incredible. He's got an incredible goal kicking rate. I think Melbourne are going to really be licking their chops knowing that, you know, outside of the top 10, they're going to be picking up the best key forward in the draft. He is going to complement Van Rooyen incredibly well. He is another tool that can bring the ball down to ground. He can allow players like Pickett to sweep at his feet. And with his athleticism, it allows him to play a role similar to what we saw Harry Mackay for Carlton play this year, where he can go further up the field and be that linking component that can take marks on the wing, you know, forward centre of that forward 50, and be the one that kind of brings the ball back. Similarly, if Van Rooyen wants to be that linking player, Armstrong's marking capacity is going to be having him out marking players within that forward square more often than not. And I feel at this point of time in the draft, Melbourne are going to be absolutely licking their chops knowing that, you know, they're dying for a key forward, and they're going to be picking up the best one available behind some teams that are probably sleeping and let this kid slide just a little bit. Pick number 12, I feel we are going to see an academy bid matched yet again. I feel Richmond are going to call out the name of Isaac Kako, who Essendon are going to come out and turn around and say, thank you very much, we will take him. Essendon have a very shallow draft pool, especially early. They're going to want to take this pick as early as they can. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to trade up using future first rounders. I think they've got 2 first round picks next year. So maybe they look at somebody like a Richmond to pick up, you know, some of these other teen picks that Richmond have available to solidify their own draft. I don't necessarily have them doing so, but landing Isaac Kako here, yet again, fills a need for Essendon's forward half. They have lost Jake Stringer, which is a lot of firepower. They are pretty much now left with Peter Wright, whose body has kind of let him down over recent years. They've still got Kyle Langford, but you can't rely on Kyle Langford every year to kick, 40, 50 goals himself. So being able to bring in somebody who has a lot of explosiveness and creativity at ground level as a small forward, Kako, as far as small forwards go, is probably the best available and the best in the draft. And Essendon, again, are going to be licking their chops at the fact that they're going to bring in a kid with so much talent. His agility, his speed, his vision, his goal sense set him apart from all the other small forwards in this draft. And I feel Essendon haven't really had an explosive, small forward crumbing player like this for a very long time. I mean, they've had Anthony McDonald tipping Woody in the past, but his explosiveness came kind of sparingly. You'd see him do a very good run-down tackle here and there, but outside of that, especially coming into the back end of, tipping Woody's career, it was few and far between when we'd see those moments, whereas Kako can come in, and his ability to win the ball at ground level is going to be great, especially for players like Peter Wright. Peter Wright, 2-meter Peter, brings the ball down to ground. Kako nipping at the heels, ready to go. It's going to excite Essendon fans, I can tell you what. This pick might be wishful thinking to feel this player could slide to as low as pick 13, but I would be incredibly stoked if he did. I've got Josh Smiley going to Richmond with the first of 2 selections back-to-back here. He is a big-bodied midfielder that, again, would complement the likes of a Finn O'Sullivan, a Sam Lawler, and is a player that Richmond have been highly interested in bringing on board this year. As I said, his size is something that rates him above some of the other midfielders here. He is huge, he is ready to go. He is built very similarly to Patrick Cripps, which is why there are a lot of comparisons between Cripps and Smiley, during the course of the year. But his agility and his stoppage craft have him likened to a Tom Green kind of midfielder. So think of a big-bodied mid like Patrick Cripps that has agility and, a little bit of speed behind him, and he's got a lot of poise with ball in hand too. So this is a player that Richmond are really keen on bringing in, not only because he's that bigger body, but he's a bigger body that has, all the traits of making him an absolute threat. He's quick by foot, he's clean by hand and foot, his stoppage craft and the ability to win contested ball as well. If Richmond can walk out of the draft pick 13 with this kid in hand, complementing O'Sullivan and Lawler, our future looks bright, and I would be one happy man. That leads into our next pick at pick number 14. This one I wrestled with for a very long time, because this is a selection here that Richmond could turn around and say, okay, it's time to look for a key forward. We need to start solidifying that. Could be the time where we look at a defender as well. So somebody like a Luke Traynor, who Richmond have been linked to, could potentially be looked at here. A Job Shanahan could be looked at as a key forward. One of the Whitlock boys could be looked at here. But I do feel we bring in a player that has that mid-forward kind of presence and availability, I feel. He's drawn comparisons to a player that, if he is even half as good as at his peak, would be a great player to have on board. I mean, when you're likened to Scott Pendlebury, you've got some talent to deal with here, and this could very well be not just a pick that Richmond, want to take or need to take. It could just be taking the best available and ensuring that we're kind of adding to our list in a way of having a little bit of depth. And I feel at pick number 14, although I wrestled with it for quite some time, Murphy Reed is going to land at our club. Listed as a pure midfielder, but as I said, has ability, especially with his scoreboard impact, to play a forward role as well. And it would be interesting to see how Uze does utilize these kids that are coming through, because we do have versatility already on our list, and a lot of people seem to forget Richmond cycled through 46 different players this year, a lot of which would have a hand in, you know, stepping up and being in our best 22. So when all of our players are available, it is going to be very interesting to see where players kind of are positioned. But I feel Murphy Reid is a player that it could be a bit of a bolter by being drafted this early. He's a player that could be drafted much later as well. But given his availability at pick number 14, I think Richmond snap him up. He's a very classy midfielder. His decision-making, poise, and aerobic capacity are rated as elite. And as I said, his scoreboard impact puts him in the realm of possibility of being able to be floated as a forward kind of player. He's not a bigger-bodied mid, so he's more of a medium to small build, which probably suits him as a faster kind of forward crumbing kind of player. As I said, Richmond could very well go a key position player here, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but I really love the look of Murphy Reid. He could go earlier. He's been linked to Melbourne and St Kilda as well as Richmond, so if Melbourne wanted to go down the route of bringing in a player like this instead of a Harvey Langford, however, I don't feel they do. St Kilda could potentially look at him as a bit of a bolter instead of a Beau Allen, but I think they'd be stupid to sleep on Beau Allen, and I don't think Beau Allen lasts to these picks, but if Beau Allen, you know, stretches out to Richmond's picks here, Richmond pick up Beau Allen, and obviously that helps our defensive line, that helps our midfield. But for the sake of this mock draft, Beau Allen's already been drafted. It comes to this point in time, and I think Richmond snap up another midfielder that shows a lot of class and poise, especially given I feel our midfield is too one-dimensional. We have lost a lot of players, as I said. Jack Graham rotating through, Liam Baker, Shea Bolton. It pretty much just leaves us currently with Dion Prestia, Jacob Hopper, both of which who have had injury-plagued years over recent years. Tim Taranto, he gets a lot of the ball, but he butchers a lot of it. You know, we'll see Kay McAuliffe get a lot of midfield minutes, I feel, this year. But having these young kids come through and start setting up that next generation, I think is going to be incredibly crucial. And that's why we select Murphy and we select Smiley back-to-back to solidify that midfield core. I feel West Coast fans will be happy with pick number 15. This is a player who has been linked to them, I feel, for a while, and I have seen a lot of mock drafts that have already been uploaded online where West Coast supporters have come through and have expressed their desire to see this player picked up. I have Xavier Lindsay getting picked up at pick number 15 and going west. He is a midfielder who is regarded as an inside-outside threat, whose kicking, speed, and overall output are all rated as strengths and at elite level. West Coast obviously are going through, or have been going through at least for a number of years now, that kind of really slow burn kind of rebuild. Tim Kelly's only going to have a couple of years left in him. You know, Elliot Yeo's getting older. We're going to not see, I don't think we're going to see Liam Duggan play through the midfield all too much, given, you know, the defensive crop at West Coast has kind of died down a little bit over recent years, so they probably need Duggan to be playing a more defensively sound game. I feel Xavier Lindsay is going to complement players like Harley Reid incredibly well. You know, when you're likened to a Zach Merritt and a Sam Flanders, this is a player who can bring not just a lot of contested ball winning and a lot of, you know, accumulation of the football, but his output and his kicking ability is really going to be touted as, you know, when they're spoken about as his strengths, it's going to be something that West Coast are going to be really, you know, licking their lips at, especially with a new coach in Andrew McQualter. He's going to be looking at having players that can break those lines and deliver the ball inside 50 incredibly well, and Xavier Lindsay ticks those boxes. I wrestled with this next pick for quite some time, and a lot of people have Port Adelaide taking Luke Traynor or similar defenders in this role, but I feel Port Adelaide have invested too heavily in their backline over recent years to not go another avenue here, and I've got them selecting Joe Berry, the small forward. I feel Port Adelaide at the top end when it comes to key forwards, they're fine. They've got Mitch Georgiades, they've got Todd Marshall, they've just brought in Jack Lukosius. Now, Jack Lukosius has the ability to be a defensive and forward swingman. I would probably prefer to see him, especially with this kind of lineup, play forward, given the fact that I think, you know, Alira, Asava Radagalia, Brendan Sirks, Thatcher, they're already players that are solidifying that back half for Port Adelaide. What Port Adelaide really need is that small coming forward that Willie Rioli can kind of bounce off of. Outside of Willie Rioli, I feel they really don't have anybody that fits that role too incredibly well. And I think Joe Berry is somebody that ticks those boxes for Port Adelaide. Again, not just a player that Port Adelaide might want to bring in, but I feel it's a player that they need to bring in. Now, Joe Berry has been linked to Richmond with earlier picks. They've also been linked to Fremantle as well as Sydney, as well as Richmond's back-end picks as well. If Joe Berry slides to those 20-odd picks, I think Richmond snap him up and bring him on board. But I don't see a team like Port Adelaide or even Fremantle passing up the opportunity to bring in a small forward who is rated for their clean hands, their goal sense, their speed, and their tackling pressure up forward. I feel Port Adelaide this year, more often than not, the ball would go inside 50, hit the deck, and it would bounce out straight away. Bringing in somebody who brings that tackling pressure but has that goal sense and clean hands and awareness and everything else really could impact Port Adelaide's forward line early. So don't be surprised if Port Adelaide bring him in and we don't see an early debut in 2025. Pick number 17 is held with Fremantle, and whilst they were probably looking at bringing in somebody like a Joe Berry, Port Adelaide have just taken him off the table, so Fremantle will look to Cooper Hines to fill that forward role. He is also a versatile player in the fact that he can go into the midfield too, so definitely somebody that could be up high on Fremantle's wish list, and I feel is somebody, again, who fits a role and a requirement for Fremantle. Now, they've picked up Shea Bolton, but I don't think Shea Bolton gets wasted as just a pure forward. I feel he will be a player that does get midfield time with Fremantle, so this allows somebody like a Hines to get drafted and, given opportunity, can play alongside the likes of Switkowski and Frederick and Banfield within that forward structure. He is rated for his power, his versatility, his goal sense, and his scoreboard impact. This is very much a player who, surprisingly, has actually been linked to players like Neil Erasmus already playing at Fremantle. Archie Perkins at Essendon, probably not a good comparison, given I don't think we haven't seen much out of Archie Perkins. But this is a player who I feel can play that small to mid forward role that would love opportunity to be nipping at the heels at players like, the big kahuna, to be nipping at the heels of players like Jai Amos. He's probably back in the pecking order, knowing that players like Walters and Frederick are going to be ahead of him, but Michael Walters probably only has a couple of years left, so being able to have Hines developing in that role could be critical, not just to Fremantle next year, but long term. This is what Fremantle's going to be looking to, because I feel Fremantle feel they have the team that can win a flag here, so they're going to be drafting ahead of time to kind of fill roles that are going to come available at a point in time. And I feel Cooper Hines has the ability to come in and step into that Michael Walters similar role. GWS get picks number 18 and 19 back to back, and I don't know how they're going to go about these picks. I've selected two players, probably players that I feel could go a lot earlier. As I said, I mentioned one of them earlier, and I'm about to mention his name. I've got Job Shanahan getting drafted at pick number 18. He is a key forward. I don't know whether this is a pick that gets made, and I've probably gone down the route of picking Job Shanahan here as a Jesse Hogan replacement. Jesse Hogan will be turning 30 next year, so he's not going to be getting, many more years into him. So having a developing key forward ready to step in and take that role could be something that Kingsley looks at. He has been linked heavily to GWS ahead of teams like Richmond and Sydney, who are both looking probably for key forward, components as well. I know Richmond definitely are. Not so much Sydney, but Sydney seem to be linked to a lot of key forwards in this draft and keen to pick one up. So it's going to be interesting to see the route Sydney does go down. But Job Shanahan has been linked to players like Cole Langford, Bailey Fritsch, those ball-winning key forwards that can really turn the tide in games. He's versatile in the way that he can be played as a ruckman as well. Maybe a little bit too small for that kind of role, but he's able to be moved around the ground. And I think Adam Kingsley prides his team on being able to move some magnets where need be. His scoreboard impact, his marking, and his mobility sets him above other key forwards as well. This is where I was saying Harry Armstrong getting picked up at pick 11 by Melbourne is a good move because of his athleticism. But then you look at Job Shanahan, and it's his mobility that sets him apart from the rest. So these key forwards that are coming through, they each hold traits that kind of set them apart. I think GWS look to bring somebody in like that. I feel their midfield is already stacked. Defensively, they're sound, and that's why I turned to the forward line here. And I think a key forward, as I said, to back up a Hogan in case they need to bring somebody through, even though they've just brought in Jake Stringer. Probably doesn't make sense to most, but I think he fits a future need for GWS, and GWS pounce here. That brings us to the next pick for GWS, which again, I feel kind of fills that forward craft role, also adds another midfielder to a little bit of depth, and I think they dive on in and they pick up Taj Houghton. This is a player that has been linked to a few clubs. He could go earlier than this pick because Fremantle are interested in him. He could potentially get picked up by Richmond early with those, earlier 13 and 14 picks. So if Murphy Reid might not be in the mix, maybe a Taj Houghton at this point in time is, because he is listed as a forward. The Bulldogs are linked to Taj Houghton as well, so he is a player seemingly in hot demand, especially given the fact that it's not only his goal sense and his ball winning that is making all these teams excited about him, but he is quick. He is packing speed. Agility and speed listed as strengths outside of Isaac Kako. This is the next best mid-forward player that possesses as much speed as he does, and this is why everyone wants to get on board. Zach Bailey comparisons are being made here. Jake Saligo, who had a breakout year this year, is also kind of thrown in the mix here. I don't know where he is going to land. This is a player that could go early, he could go later, but his X-Factor ability is something that I think Adam Kingsley at this point in time might not want to pass up on. Again, players like Toby Green, getting older, not going to be there all that much, This is also a player that could also come in, because we saw this year, Kingsley hasn't shied away from bringing in young kids and giving them opportunity. Taj Houghton could be a kid that comes in and has immediate impact in that forward line. So, who knows? But I think here, GWS back-to-back picks, they solidify that forward craft. They bring in a key forward for future use. They bring in a mid-forward in Taj Houghton who could have immediate impact. And I think Kingsley would be very happy with those back-to-back picks. The top 20 is going to round out with yet another academy bid matched. I think the Bulldogs are going to nominate Sam Marshall, and Brisbane are going to fly in and pick him up. Two players have been spoken about for Brisbane all off-season. They traded accordingly to make sure they could pick them up. Levi Ashcroft already, as I said, would get picked up at pick number 3. Sam Marshall gets picked up at pick 20. Another football accumulator. He is a midfielder who they're going to look to, again, for the future. Lachie Neale isn't going to play forever. Dunkley isn't going to play forever. This is a player who is going to complement the Ashcrofts incredibly well. He's very consistent with ball in hand. His kicking is rated elite, and his work rate is rated elite as well. When you look to the future at Brisbane, you're looking at Levi Ashcroft, Will Ashcroft, Sam Marshall, these players solidifying that midfield. Brisbane aren't going to pass up academy players. They've put themselves in a position to pick him up. They rate him highly. He might not come into the team straight away, but it's good to have that depth, especially with Brisbane getting hit rather hard with injury this year as well. And it's going to be a must-watch, I feel, on Sam Marshall, his development within Brisbane's system. And when he does get opportunity, he's going to run with it with both hands. Pick number 21, I have the Bulldogs taking Jesse Detoli. Now, he's a mid-forward that I feel would probably benefit the Bulldogs more as a forward than a midfielder. We know midfield-wise, the disparity between the Bulldogs' best and worst is kind of rather large. You've got a couple of top-end players like Liberatore, Bontempelli, and then the drop-off happens quite severely. So Detoli could actually come in and maybe have even immediate impact in that midfield and give him some midfield minutes. Forward half of the ball, we've got, Cody Waitman as a viable small forward. There's a couple of others that we've seen kind of over the last couple of years. But this kid adds a lot of poise, a lot of goal presence about him in the way of not only hitting the scoreboard, but just his goal awareness as well, and has been likened to players like Toby Green, who, at the peak of his powers, is almost unstoppable. The only thing that is going to deter Jesse Detoli from getting early game time at the Bulldogs, or any other player that gets drafted for that fact at this point in time, is the fact that they could get bevoed. Because we know Luke Beveridge, for whatever reason, has shown some inaptability this year when it comes to selection. So whilst Jesse Detoli, I feel, fits a want and a need for the Bulldogs in the way of being able to roll through that midfield, go through that forward line, and can bring immediate impact to the team, we could not see him get any game time at all. I mean, we've still got Riley Sanders, who might be looking at more opportunity now that Jack McRae has been traded out. But I think that forward kind of small to medium build role is something that is up for grabs at the Bulldogs, and I think Jesse Detoli fits that niche quite well. North Melbourne then have pick number 22, which has been dropped down from pick 18 due to all the academy bids, and I think they look at key forward Jonty Fall. Now, I mentioned before that they've already got, Larkey, they've got Darling, but Darling, I think he's, 32 years old, something like that, so we're only going to see maybe a year or two out of Darling, and he was probably only brought in for his leadership and his know-how and being able to impart knowledge onto that forward group. Bringing in somebody like a Jonty Fall, who is highly rated as a key forward in this draft, would allow him to develop for a year or two before stepping into the role that Darling would be retiring from, and he would have been learning from one of the better key forwards of the past generation. Jack Darling might not be as good as some of the key forwards around him, but he's been incredibly serviceable. He has had a very strong career, I feel anyway, despite injury letting him down over some years. His strengths are marked down as his marking, his scoreboard impact, his contested work, and yet again, his agility. These key forwards that are coming through in this draft are all showing mobility, athleticism, agility. This is why I feel Richmond are probably going to play into picking up one of these key forwards earlier in the draft. So maybe somebody like a Murphy Reid doesn't get selected by Richmond, and we see a Jonty Fall or a Job Shanahan get selected, or even a Harry Armstrong if he does slide. Murphy Reid could very well end up at Melbourne, and we see Harry Armstrong drop to Richmond's next pick, and then, of course, Richmond would snap him up. This is why, as I said at the top of the video, I want to open up the comment section down below to conversations about where you think players are going to land, because it is always objective when these lists are getting put together. But I feel Jonty Fall would land at North Melbourne. He's been linked to landing spots such as Richmond, GWS, Port Adelaide, and West Coast. Now, again, I don't think Port Adelaide would be in the mix for picking up a key forward. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't think he would slide to a second round pick for West Coast or Port Adelaide to pick him up. I definitely feel he would get snapped up in the first round. He has been linked to players like Logan McDonald and Jake Riccardi. Now, there is a disparity there because both of those players go missing quite severely. So, again, when making comparisons to players as well, does not necessarily mean they are going to be as good or as bad as some of those players are likened to. Like before, Josh Smiley, I said, has been likened to Patrick Cripps. Doesn't mean Josh Smiley is going to be a two-time Brownlow winner. It's just that their skill sets kind of complement each other, basically, and are very similar. I think, as I said, though, North Melbourne would be very happy to pick up Jonty Fall here. It fills that need that Jack Darling is going to eventually leave, and Jonty Fall and Nick Larkey could become a very powerful duo for North Melbourne for many years moving forward. So don't be surprised if Jonty Fall does get snapped up earlier, but if available here, North Melbourne would be crazy to pass him up. Sydney hold the next pick number 23, and as I alluded to earlier, they might be in the market for a key forward, and I've been seeing them linked to a lot of key forwards, but I don't know whether they have a niche that needs to be filled outside of that forward half. We know the back line for Sydney is rather strong, some older players in there, so maybe they look at bringing in a defender down the line. Their midfield is already incredibly strong, so I don't think they bring in a midfielder, because why would you have a midfielder brought in when you've got not only a strong unit, but you've got a rather young unit running through there already? So I think they bring in a player that is probably listed more forward sound than midfield sound, and while this player is listed as both, he is namely played out of the forward line, and I have them taking Hamish Davis. He is a player whose scoreboard impact, contested marking, and his endurance are all listed as strengths, but I think it's his power that sets him above the rest. His tackle breaking ability is something that I feel Sydney are really going to love. He brings, again, a lot of pressure within that forward half, so him and Papley playing on either sides of that forward line is going to be great to watch. I feel outside of Papley, outside of Joel Amadi, outside of Logan McDonald, there are some spots within Sydney's forward line that have kind of been pieced together in part. You know, Sam Wicks has been thrown up there sometimes. We've seen Justin McInerney thrown in there certain times. Could Hamish Davis come in and be one of those players that solidifies a spot alongside Tom Papley and be's that, you know, other pressure applying forward that I think Sydney would really not only want but need within their structures? I feel when the ball hits the deck within Sydney's forward half, it's a little bit of an easy rebound, whereas obviously they can set back up behind the ball and rebound it back in. I think Sydney would rather be able to lock that ball into their forward 50 more often than not, and I think Hamish Davis brings enough tackling pressure that could make him a very tantalising pick for Sydney here. He's been likened to Hugh Greenwood, and Hugh Greenwood at his best, I feel, was very much an X-Factor type player, especially when he played at Adelaide. He's been linked to teams like the Bulldogs, Port Adelaide and Fremantle, but again, these are picks that are touted as later picks down the line. So the fact that Hamish Davis is available at this pick, Sydney might want to pounce, especially given that Sydney have been heavily linked to him as well. Richmond roll around with the next pick, and I think this is where we pull the trigger. We get ourselves a key forward. Now, as I said, in reality, Richmond could have already taken a key forward here, so I don't know whether this is a pick that Richmond do make. But I have Richmond taking one of the Whitlock boys, and I have them taking Jack Whitlock, who is listed as a key forward. Now again, he's listed here as having upside as a strength. Now this is the only key forward within the draft that I've seen that upside is listed as one of his be-all and end-alls. The fact that his upside is the biggest out of all key forwards in the draft might not necessarily mean that he comes in and makes immediate impact, but with time and with development could turn into a power key forward that Richmond are desperately craving, especially when the time comes for Tom Lynch to move on. Whitlock coming in and taking that role and having a couple of years to develop could be critical to Richmond's future success. He's also listed as having strong marking and vertical ability, scoreboard impact, and his consistency. Consistency is something that not many of the key forwards throughout this draft have also been linked to. So if Jack Whitlock can fall to pick number 24 and land in the lap of Richmond, they will be absolutely laughing, and I, as a Richmond supporter, will be so fucking stoked. GWS come in at pick number 25, and with a couple of players that have been traded out and landed elsewhere, there might be room in their defensive lineup for somebody to come in and have immediate impact. And I've got that player down as Harrison Oliver, a intercepting defender who is touted for his kicking, his vision, and his work rate. Has been highly linked to GWS throughout this period, has also been linked, however, to GWS at a much later pick. Ahead of that pick, both St Kilda and Fremantle have been named, but I've got St Kilda already ticking their defensive boxes off in this draft by taking Bo Allen and then taking Toby Travalia. So that would take St Kilda off the cards. And again, I don't know why Fremantle would be looking at bringing in a tall intercepting defender when I think they've already got those roles already situated within their back half. So it fits not only a want, but maybe a need, not just for the future, but maybe immediately for GWS. Being able to come in, having immediate impact in that back line. You know, we've seen Peatling leave. We saw Isaac Cumming leave as well. You know, those type of players that have now left opportunity for somebody to come in and, you know, earn their spot. I feel Harrison Oliver could be that player for GWS. Pick number 26, I have Matt Whitlock going to Sydney, the twin brother of Jack, who was just picked 2 picks ahead. Now, again, very similar to Jack, upside listed as a strength here, which you'd only be happy to pick up. I mean, again, a player that's not going to have immediate impact, but give him time, could be an absolute game changer. His versatility is what sets him apart here as well. We'll get into that in a second, but his intercepting, agility, and mobility is also what helps set him apart as a big man. Again, has to get a little bit of weight put on him before he can have a bit of impact. But you can always play skinnier kids and give them opportunity at the level, especially when you're as highly touted as some of those kids are. He's got a lot of landing spots listed here. Richmond are keen on him, so I don't know whether Richmond would look to maybe bring both in if they could. GWS are keen. West Coast, Port Adelaide, Fremantle, all teams that have met with Matt Whitlock as well as Jack to secure their services, albeit later picks than this particular pick. Richmond obviously looking maybe within the 20s to pick him up, but if they take Jack first, I think Matt gets taken off the table by another team. The utility part here is interesting because over 2 periods of particular time this year, he played for the Murray Bushrangers in the Talent League as well as Vic Country in the National Championships. Now, he averaged 14 disposals and 5 marks over those 2 competitions, as well as kicking 29 goals. However, despite kicking 29 goals over those 2 completely different competitions, he was selected in the Talent League's Team of the Year as fullback. So it shows that he has the ability to not only be damaging in defence, but also up forward. So that kind of reminds me, from a Richmond perspective, as a Noah Bolter type. You know, he can play a tall intercepting defensive role, but can also go forward and then become a key target. And I think for Sydney, that would be more interesting to them than what Jack Whitlock would be, just because of that versatility. Being able to have somebody as a swing to throw back defensively if they need it. What I think Richmond would take Jack over Matt here is we've already got Noah Bolter, as I just said, so we wouldn't need to have another forward back defensive swing. I think Sydney would very much like to have that available to them. They've already got, as I said, a young forward line. They've got Amadi, they've got McDonald, but having somebody to be able to develop and come into their system, I think they'll take. And as I said, if they've been linked to a key forward and they want to bring one in, this is probably their last chance to do so before they start getting snapped up later. The final pick of the round is Richmond's second last pick for the draft entirely. They will end round 1 with the final pick, and they will start the second night with pick number 1 overall, which is very, very interesting to see. I personally think they might even trade off that next pick, because there are some teams interested in trading up to that, especially if we can pick up a future first for it. That being said, there is one player that is still available at this point in time in the draft, and I think Richmond would be absolutely moronic to pass this up. We are going to take Alex Dodson out of South Australia, the best ruckman available in the competition, and with Toby Nankervis getting older and Samson Ryan maybe not being up to the challenge at AFL level, it is time for Richmond to hammer down and have somebody developing to take over Toby Nankervis's role. He is likened to 3 of the premier ruckmen in the competition: Max Gawn, Rowan Marshall, Tim English. If we can pick up a young ruckman that is already linked to comparisons like those players, we are setting ourselves up for gold. We have taken a draft haul, according to myself here, that sets us up in the midfield. We pick up some players that can help us up forward, and then we lock down the best ruckman in this draft. Richmond would be walking out absolutely stoked here. Strengths, his ruck craft, his athleticism, his work rate, his aerial ability. As I said, they are going to be fucking rubbing their hands together, licking their chops. The only team that has been linked to picking him up potentially earlier is the Western Bulldogs, to bring in somebody as a Tim English kind of backup. But I don't know why they would do that if they already have Sam Darcy in the wings, and Sam Darcy is a brilliant player. So I don't know why they would have someone kind of brought in at this period in time that would be 3 cabs down the rank, when Alex Dodson landing at Richmond could even put him in second tier and could even get some early game time as a pivot point for Toby Nankervis to have a bit of a break. I have seen this kid play. He is absolutely incredible. There is a reason why he has been touted as the best ruckman in this draft. To give you an idea of how much of a monster this kid is, he played 9 games this year for Sturt's under-18s team, and he had over 200 hitouts in 9 games collectively. Absolutely huge. I'm telling you now, this kid could be an absolute steal at this point in time. He averaged 17.3 disposals, 19.7 hitouts, 6.7 hitouts to advantage, 3.7 clearances, and 3 score involvements throughout the under-18s competition. He is exciting. This player is somebody who I think could quickly become a cult hero at Richmond. And we know Richmond and the Tiger Army love picking their cult heroes and getting behind them. And I think Dodson could be the man. And that wraps up my mock draft, ladies and gentlemen. Picks number 1 through to 27, round 1 done and dusted. As I said, Richmond then hold pick number 28. I don't know off the top of my head who they would pick. I will throw a name caution to the wind. There is one player that we have been linked to that hasn't been picked up at this point in time, according to my draft. I think Richmond start off the second night by picking up Luke Traynor, the defender. However, don't be surprised if a team like Geelong or, Essendon might want to get involved in picking up an earlier pick and start throwing their weight around a bit as well. Do hope you guys enjoyed this. As I said, it took me a while to compile. I know some people aren't going to agree with what I've done. Some people might be absolutely stoked with what I did. So again, for the third time this video, comment section is open. Let's have a discussion about it. Do you agree? Do you disagree? If your team wasn't mentioned in round 1 because you don't have any picks in round 1, who would you like to see your team draft out of the players that might be available later on? Let's talk about it. Let's have a good chat. I'm going to be watching live, tomorrow night. Hopefully, the players that I've listed get drafted to Richmond, especially my top 3. Smiley, Finn O'Sullivan, and Lawler. I would love to see all 3 of them at my club. Outside of that, who knows? Roll the dice. Teams are going to draft players that probably I haven't even listed here. There could be bolters that are supposed to happen later in the draft that end up in the top 20. Players in the top 20 that I've picked might not get picked up until the 30s and 40s. Who knows? Do hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, hit that like button down below. Do subscribe around here if you are new. We are trying to grow this channel, and I would appreciate it if you got on board. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I do have plans on doing other off-season content. I did want to assess the trade period, but I felt it would be a little bit more interesting if we waited for the draft to go down, so then we could collectively combine each club's trade period and draft period and then see collectively how they have performed, because a team might be underwhelming in the trade period but score big in the draft period, and then vice versa. They might do an absolutely great trade period but then fumble the draft. So I think waiting for the draft period to go through and then we look at each team after that is the way we're going to handle it. And I've got some ideas for looking at other concepts on things like what the AFL has to change, and we're going to look at things like the Brownlow, the AFL rulings, umpiring, all that kind of stuff, and collectively have that flow into the 2025 year where we can start doing some bigger and better things as well. So if that's something you want to get behind, as I said, hit that subscribe button, and if you've got any ideas at home for content you would like to see, I would appreciate it if you reached out and let me know in the comments down below as well. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here, and as always, I will catch you guys next time.